Wow, are those drawings on the back? By the way, we're starting.
Yeah, these are,
Susan
oh,
Lyon is on. Yay. Scott Burdick's significant other. Who told me, by the way, when I invited Scott, I said, I really like you to be in my drawing show. And he goes, well, that's great. He goes, but my wife's much better drawer than I am. And I
oh,
looked at your work and I go, yeah, I agree. Let's have Susan on. She's fantastic. Well,
oh, thank you.
yeah, I'm really excited to see what you do in person because I've seen it on the internet and it's just insane how good it is. And I
Thank
like,
you so much. No, I, I'm sorry to interrupt, but like when I got the invitation, it was probably, I've never been so happy to be invited to a show
nice.
because totally, because first of all, I love the fact that you were pretty, I guess open or flexible about subject matter.
Yep.
And I just have always loved works on paper. And I love the fact that a show dedicated to works on paper, like drawings, is very exciting to me because I think that I've noticed in shows over the years, like once one person puts in a nice drawing, then all of a sudden it people start to wake up. Like they didn't
Yeah.
realize that drawings can be like a final finished piece of work. And so then all of a sudden I'll see more drawings in these shows. And I think because of this show coming up in February, it's going to change a lot of people's minds.
I think it will too. And I think, interestingly enough, might even change the market in the
Mhm.
sense that I think so often artists themselves don't value their prep work
Mhm.
and the drawings that they do. And they just like, oh, well, that's just how I make my paintings. And then you go, no, those are unbelievable. Same as Maynard Dixon. Maynard Dixon
Yeah.
didn't value a lot of his drawings. He had a rule. It was a third he would keep, a third he
Mm.
would destroy, and a third he would use for paintings. So
Hmm.
that's how he did what he drew. And he drew constantly, right? He didn't have a camera, so he was always drawing. And so there's, a lot more drawings out there, but he didn't really value them that much. I mean, he valued them. He would sell them if they were in that,
Mhm.
third of the good enough. And then the other third that he did for paintings, I think he kept a lot of those actually. I don't think those ever really left his possession until after his death, which probably is different than you because, and you can tell me because you focus so much in on drawing. And like you were about to say before I interrupted you, the pieces around your side here,
Yeah.
those are, I can't tell if they're drawings or watercolors or,
No, there are drawings,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, they're
And
fantastic.
thank you. And I think also probably I was influenced, like early on, Scott and I were both influenced by Nikolai Feshin. We were influenced by Alphonse Mucha and Klimt, and
Yeah,
especially Richard Smith,
yeah,
because he was probably the first artist that I was aware of who would use dry media and make it almost look like a painting, to
mm,
where people would be kind of like confused, was it a painting or not? And yet it was all just used with brush. And
yeah,
it's a lot of times not even with a water or alcohol. It's literally just the brush and powder and being able to do that sort of technique, which to me is like drawing with dry. I mean, it's like painting with dry medium. So that's why I've never thought of my drawings. I've never thought of drawings as preliminaries. I
and it
I don't
shows.
think so.
It shows, by
Well,
the way.
thanks. I guess we being influenced by those artists, I always thought that drawings could be just the final product. And yeah, so I mean, I can understand maybe landscape artists possibly, wanting to like figure out composition, but I think for portrait people, a
Yeah,
lot of us, would think of like if a drawing would be something you could frame, especially if you thought outside the box a little bit, like by either technique or just edges or something, you could make it into something that wasn't what we would call academic,
mhm,
meaning everything is completely rendered, everything is like almost like what people might consider a commission.
yeah,
Like, oh, we want to look exactly like that person. Well, for Scott and I mean, we don't. want it to look exactly like somebody. We want it to be a combination of artist and model.
Mhm.
So we take liberties, you know.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, I collect a lot of drawings in my own world, a lot by Maynard Dixon, probably. I don't even know how many I have. Maybe, I don't even know. 100 drawings, maybe? I don't know. By the way, one of the drawings we're going to, there's going to be awards at this show that we're doing.
Oh,
So yeah, I know there's going to be some awards. And it's
okay.
so, and I'm not selecting anything. We actually have, judges that will do that. But the award I'm going to give is actually I'm going to give a Maynard Dixon drawing to somebody who is picked, I
Oh,
know, who's considered the best, whatever they consider. So, which will be
wow.
very interesting. Yeah, I know. So,
That's exciting. Cool.
yeah, there's going to be at least 3 awards that I know of at this point. So it's going to be fun. And for those people who are just hearing about this first time, it's, Masters of the Drawing. And it's there you go. That piece is
Is
right
it
in the
backwards?
office. Yep, that's it. And the
I
and
loved it. I was so impressed when you sent this to us
yeah,
because this is like giving us all the information and all the artists. And I
yep,
was like, whoa, this is a very nice, just a reminder note.
yep,
I'm
that's
like,
what it
that's
was.
pretty cool. Yeah.
I wanted it to say you're special, and
Oh.
and I want because I think this is a special event. And I wanted to have something that was like that, that laid
Hmm.
it all out, even though I've already given it to you in the past. I wanted to make sure you have it all. And you'll notice on the date it says the 14th and the 15th. So the
Hmm.
14th is just for the artists. So
Cool.
that's just literally those individuals that want to come in that day early.
Hmm.
It's a party just for them. So
Wow.
fun. I mean, there'll be a few people in there probably that aren't,
Yeah.
but it's really, and it's in our Maynard Dixon Native American Art Museum, which will be housing part of the drawing show. So it
I'm,
will,
I'm getting goosebumps. I can't believe it. I haven't been to, Scott and I haven't been to Tucson in probably over 20 years, maybe 22 years or something. And we're going to come in a few days early too,
nice.
just to spend time. And I've heard about your museum, and it's like, I guess it's kind of, and I have your books and stuff. So I guess it's going to blow my mind a little bit. It's hard to imagine being able to own a museum like that. That's
Yeah, it just
pretty cool.
blows my mind sometimes
That's great.
and my pocketbook on occasion too. But it's, you get to do fun things like this too. So part of the show, well, you'll be in a museum show that will be hanging, in part of in the exhibit hall that we have in the museum, which is, and
Wow.
Dixon would love this, right? Because, he was so graphic drawing was so important to him. He recognized it was. He was one of the best that I've ever seen, and to have all these young artists or living artists that are still embracing it and haven't just said goodbye to that art form in next to his stuff. And I'll put in that showroom, I'll pick maybe 5 spectacular Maynard Dixon drawings in with all the contemporary artists. So it'll be like, okay, you're hanging next to whatever Shapes of Fear or Cloud World or,
Wow.
or that
That's so
drawing
neat.
that you had in front of you, Loma. Yep, Loma Hemlock. Yeah, I know, right? Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
I know. And it's about, we can't see it, but I'm looking at it right now. It's a 16 by 20 almost. Yeah.
Mm.
So it's a big, big drawing.
Well, I'm excited to see. I have to say, I probably know maybe 60%, 70% of these artists, but there's so many artists that I can't wait to see
Yeah,
their
what they
work.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the great thing too about these shows is that you obviously have a lot of variety. You're not just
Yes.
doing one kind of thing. So,
No, I wanted everything. Yeah, I want to see the whole gamut of what's out there and what's possible. And
yeah, it's
so
so
yeah.
exciting. Well,
And
I
it's a
mean,
nice time in February too. February is a good time here. So February
excellent.
15th.
Oh
So
my God.
So let's, we've never met. I don't know if we've never met. Or I've never talked. I mean, I've talked to Scott a couple different times. We had a great conversation, not only in the podcast, but also
Yeah,
in,
no, he loved talking with you. He can't say enough nice things about you.
oh, that's so nice. Yeah. Yeah. No, you're both very, very talented individuals. And, it's interesting. I have quite a few people in my gallery that are husband and wife, teams, like, just like Terry and John Moyers,
Mhm.
people like that. So, and you guys have been a team for a while. And let's go back and we'll get to how that happened. I actually know the backstory because it was in Chicago, but I don't know the backstory of how you grew up and how you became who you are. I know you were very interested in art as a child, right?
Well, my dad had gone to the Art Institute of Chicago, so we had art in our house, but I didn't really know anything about drawing until I saw a program on Georgia O'Keeffe.
That was a
And I remember like it was so pivotal. I mean, it was like I remember watching that and just how like all of a sudden my life path went this way. And I mean, I love her work and stuff, but I think so much of it was just the idea of somebody living a life that was so extraordinary.
yeah.
Somebody like also just a woman being spotlighted like that. So after I saw that program the summer before my senior year in high school, I started to take classes at the art school of the Art Institute in Chicago where they were geared towards high school students.
Hmm.
And so I started to do that. And then my dad knew teachers at the American Academy of Art. And that school was just what you would call an technical, like just technical, which meant that it was an associate's degree and you only did art, like you only did illustration, you only did fine art, you only did drawing or painting. And I guess I was so lucky because he knew a teacher there. And so I started to go there after high school, but I wasn't talented at all. I mean, I really, in my mind, I just wanted to have a creative life. I wanted to have adventure. I wanted to like have something special to work towards. And I thought I was going to go into advertising or something, but I say this story a lot because it has so much to do with teachers, is that when I first started going to the American Academy, I mean, totally no skills, no background, and there was two classes. There was what you'd call fundamentals that gave you the curriculum of Andrew Loomis. I don't know. Andrew Loomis was a very famous illustrator, and he created this sort of Bible called Creative Illustration. And our school was sort of based off of it. So every month they would do a chapter about composition, about color, about all that type of stuff. And so that was one class. And then the other class would be life drawing. And I remember just the different energies of the teachers. One teacher was just distant, he would had favorites, all that type of stuff that didn't make you feel warm and fuzzy. And then the life drawing teacher was this older gentleman that, had worked there for 30 years and everybody loved. And he was just like a grandfather,
Hmm.
Mr. Parks. Scott had Mr. Parks and Nancy Guzik had Mr. Parks and Dan Gearhart's and all these people, really wonderful artists had Mr. Parks. And I just remember like after 2 weeks of school, I didn't understand what being a fine artist was, but I just wanted to go towards him. So
Hmm.
I was like, oh, because he was nurturing. So it has so much to do with like who you meet when you go to art school. Like so many people I know, they get turned off of art or they get pushed away from art by like not so nice teachers. And so I totally changed my focus from being in graphic to like just this fantasy of being a fine artist. And so I went to school there, and I mean I was never good or anything, but I had learned about Scott because he had graduated right before I started, and I'd heard about Richard Schmid, and I'd heard about all these wonderful artists that were in Chicago and were members of the Palette and Chisel.
Hmm.
And that is an old art club, still there.
Yep.
And so I just would hear these stories about these young kids, these students that were making a living and this magical artist named Richard Schmid. And so luckily, I guess it's just timing. I feel completely blessed because not only did my dad know a teacher, not, I could go to school there easily. Literally, I think a year's worth of art school was $4,000.
Yeah.
So if you think about college, right? I even talk to people now who want to go to art school and they have to get loans,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, there's just no way I mean, it's such an iffy business, but to then be in debt. So everything was pretty lucky for me. And so
Was your
knew,
dad, did your dad, was he a professional artist? He went to the,
no,
but
he
he got
was,
a degree in art?
he went to the Art Institute, he got a degree, but that was like in the late 50s.
Yeah,
And then in the 60s, it's just it was like it wasn't the easiest thing to be an artist. I know he did a few mural type stuff, but he went into advertising and he did all kinds of odd jobs, for decades. And then he went into creative merchandise. But
but
but he
art.
had,
So he did creative jobs his whole
yeah, I
career.
mean, that was his dream. So I think in a way I lived out his dream.
Yeah, I'm sure
It's
that's true.
like he was, it was sort of like a whim. I remember asking my dad after seeing that Georgia O'Keeffe, I said, "Oh, can I take classes at the Art Institute for the high school?" And I mean, he was like, "Yeah," and he would drive me there. So I was lucky in that, that fact that I could have a parent being so supportive.
Yeah.
Um, and then he started to go to the American Academy and took Saturday classes and then he started to go to the Palette and Chisel with us too. So, that was nice. And well, anyway, so I met Scott when I was a student
Yes.
and we just happened to live really near each other. And okay, well, the backstory is that I had told my dad, I'd said, well, you have to buy Scott Burdick because he's going to be famous. Because our teacher, Mr. Parks, would
Yeah.
talk about Scott Burdick and would talk about all these other students. And
Funny.
so in my mind, I was like, oh my gosh, they're superstars. Oh my gosh, this is what I want to do. And so my dad had gone to one of an art auction at the Palette and Chisel, like a Christmas thing, and for Christmas had given me one of his paintings, and we actually have it hanging in our
Oh,
living
that's
room.
funny.
So when I met Scott, when I had gone to the Palette and Chisel one day because I knew my friend was posing, and the first thing I could say to Scott was, "I own one of your paintings." So it was all, I was, and so then Scott said, "Oh, I'd like you to pose," because he was a monitor, and I was all so excited. And anyway, that's kind of how we met. And so I just started to pose at the Palette and Chisel just as a model,
Yeah.
and that's how. And then Richard painted me and then gave me a painting. And so it was like, it really was all like incredibly, I don't know if it's luck. I don't know what it is, but it was my greatest blessing, to like meet them and then Scott and I started to go out and so then I was still in school, but we would meet and paint at the Pelton Chisel after school
Right.
and then lived in Chicago for a few years, scraping by, month to month. And then we just got an opportunity we wanted to move out of Chicago because not only was it expensive, but we wanted to be able, because we just had an apartment. So like Scott would have like the living room and I would have a bedroom. And so we never didn't have any space. And we were like dreaming of a place that you could have a studio and we wanted to travel. That was like our big thing
Yeah.
was like we wanted to paint people and we wanted to paint people from other countries. We wanted to like travel. So we couldn't live in Chicago and afford to travel. So we just started to look around and we moved to North Carolina kind of on a whim. I mean, seriously, on a whim. So we moved to North Carolina, super cheap house. I mean, like laughable cheap. And so we could live here, and then we didn't have overhead. So that's why we moved here, right?
Yeah. And so you start when so Scott's what, maybe a year older you in school?
That's about like 2.5 years older than me.
Yeah. And yeah, in school though, right? So,
Yeah.
okay. So you both graduate. You're trying to make it in Chicago, very expensive. You both find out, you probably knew before you got together that both of you like to travel, right? Did you,
I
or did
think
you?
I definitely had the bug, and I
Yeah.
think Scott, once I voiced it, he's just ready to go at any time. So I think it's, I don't think he ever even dreamed to travel. Like Scott, I think in the back of his mind, he wanted to paint other cultures, and so how he would do that was he would go to Renaissance fairs,
Mm.
So there
It's
was
a
like a
different
big
culture
Renaissance.
for sure.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I know. Well,
Uh-huh.
I mean, he would go take tons of photos of gypsies and people dressed up, and he did
Yeah.
tons of paintings, and they were very popular. And you know,
Would he
and then
sell them
so
there?
I think, oh, well, no, he would sell them in galleries.
Yeah, okay.
So Scott met Richard when he was in school, and because of Richard, Richard helped Scott and a few other artists kind of get into galleries.
Richard
And
Smith, right?
then Richard Schmid. And
Yeah.
so God had this path, like he had a path to like into fine art and had a mentor. So um that really, really helped him because I think Scott originally wanted to be an illustrator. He originally wanted to do things like N.C. Wyeth or, Norman Rockwell. But even at that time, people were saying that like illustration was going away a little bit. So um, the gallery world that Richard introduced him to was like a way. And then Scott was super successful. I mean, at 21, he was making a living at art,
Yeah.
so that's how I met him. So when I met Scott, I'm like, wow, you're like Superman. I- Um, and that's, so that's my vision of him. Like, oh my gosh, he's just so talented and he's so successful. And that's why I told my dad, I was like, Dad, you have to buy Scott Burdick. Um, so he was obviously very happy when we started to date because I think my parents just like wanted to like grab him and say, you can never let Scott go.
So you guys decide you want to travel, especially you,
Mhm.
realize you can't do it, even though Scott's making a living now. Are you making a living as an artist as well?
No, I mean, not no. I mean, when I graduated school, Scott and I moved in together, but we lived in very cheap apartments and we were living month to month. I mean, even though Scott was selling, it's still like enough money to pay rent. It's enough money to just, live. And it's not guaranteed. Any artist knows that you could have like good months and bad months. Like
Yeah.
there's
Good
times when you
years
don't
and
sell
bad
anything.
years too.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
you have to be very frugal, and my dad helped us out sometimes, and that's also why we were like, I think we need to move if we need to be able to like not have such high overhead.
Yeah.
And that's why we moved to North Carolina because it was just so much cheaper, and the weather is just a lot
Yeah,
nicer
it's
too.
beautiful. Now
Yeah.
everybody wants to live in North Carolina, right?
Well, except for hurricanes now, like all of a sudden, we never used to get them.
Yeah.
So it's like the last 5 years. I mean, it's just sort of like there's a weird thing where they're coming inland now. But
Yeah. Do they affect you where you are?
well, we've gotten the edges of them and we've gotten like our power taken out, but we live slightly on a hill. So
Yeah.
we've never had like flooding or stuff like that, but around us for sure. Yeah, there's trees down and there's
Yeah.
flooding and stuff.
And
It's just weird.
and
Yeah.
so once you get to North Carolina, you're both working as artists.
Yes.
Scott's what galleries are you in at that point? Because you're both young, right? You're early
Okay, yeah.
20s.
I
You're
mean,
early 20s?
in our mid 20s.
Yeah, mid 20s.
I was 26 when we moved here. I mean, what galleries? Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, the first gallery that we really were in, and Scott was in, and then I joined, was Talisman Gallery in Bartlesville. So I don't know if you'd ever heard of that.
Yep.
So that was a gallery for a long, long time, and
Yep.
you could sell paintings unframed, and you could sell things really cheap, and then there was other galleries, gosh, but mainly galleries like in like Santa Fe and Texas and like Fredericksburg, and um, I'm just trying to, I mean, we've kind of moved around. Either galleries either change ownership or they go out, they change, the person stops the business. But we've been in galleries in California and Colorado and Jackson Hole and Charleston.
What
But
was your first gallery, the one in Bartlesville? Yours?
yes. Hmm.
And what kind of imagery were you doing at that point?
You
Portrait?
know what? I think I was doing some portraits, but I was doing a lot of still lifes. And I think it's because also back then, just it was expensive to hire models. So I did a lot of still lifes. And um, it was before even being able to have a monitor or have a good camera. And so, or be able to travel. So until we could travel, we didn't really work from like references. And it was hard to get models because you have to paint a lot from life. So like I'd say, if you have a model, 10 sessions, maybe two or three of those might come out to where you like them. The
Hmm.
other seven are practice. And so it's hard to spend that kind of money and then know that like some of these paintings are just not going to come out to so I was always really intimidated by that. I was, scared to spend that kind of money. And so I did a lot of still lifes in the beginning.
And were you and Scott sharing the models? Would you have a model and that you would go, okay, you do yours, I'm doing mine. That way you can double dip, right?
Oh, sure. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, no, we always paint together when we have a model.
Yep.
And Scott's really good. I mean, his rate was much better than mine. I was talking about me, like 3 out of 10 would work out. Scott maybe 8 out of 10. But no, when we would hire models, we would paint together. And then when we moved here and stuff, it was slow going, but we started to get an art group and friends to where now we have like a little bit of a community where we have a group of friends that will go in and paint models together. And Scott and I we'll hire models just on our own sometimes. And then we will also have a group where we have a model and we all kind of paint together. And um, but yeah, you have to paint from life. You can't just stop painting from life and only work from photos. You have to do both. Like Scott and I we're very honest about the fact that a lot of our work is from references, only because so much of the things that we're excited about are from trips, or we also love poses and we love compositions of sometimes movement, like action,
Right.
like they're doing something. They're not just like completely still and um, and that has to come from, doing references, but that's why we have to do both.
And your
You
references,
don't.
your references are both photography and drawing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And you were saying if you don't do both, you were about to say before I interrupted.
Well, you get stagnant. Like if you're only painting from life, what happens is a lot of times you, first of all, can't do the poses that might be really dynamic. But also, I mean, I know a lot of artists that do atelier where they only work from life, and sometimes like they'll work on a painting, like and they'll have model sessions like 6, 8, 9 times. And it's like expensive. So for them to make money back, it's like they have to price themselves so high.
Right.
And for us, it's just a business plan. I mean, you hire a model for maybe 2 or 3 times from life, on the same pose, and then you do the final things from the reference. But if you paint too much from life, then you can't do dynamic poses. But then if you paint too much from photos, then you can become kind of what we call like we overwork stuff. You work too long because you can. There's this immediacy from life. So that's why you have to balance because they both have good. And so you try and have your work that you do from references look fresh,
Mhm.
and then you try to have the refinement and you got to learn from both. So
Mm.
um, too many people, though, that I talk with are students of ours, they get told that they can't work from references, that it's bad. And I'm like, well, I don't know who told you that. That's a judgment. That's like dogma, which, so many famous artists in the past worked from references. And as long as you understand the limitations of photos, and as long as you take them as inspiration, and not just being literal, not just being
Right.
hyper literal, then of course we as artists we want to like create our own world. So of course we want to hire models, we want to like make a world of light and outfits and poses and even emotions. We want to create a story with that. But that's why, yeah, so that's why we love, Scott's why, it's great because Scott knows how to take photos really well. And so we love doing both. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would think that and again, I'm not a painter. I write, I'm a writer, but I don't paint. And I would think that having the model in front of you, this live person, gives you the sense of setting and
Mhm.
three-dimensionality and just the essence of a human, of that specific person that you cannot get from just a photograph. Now, you can take the photograph and then you can
Mhm.
go back and you're working from it, and then all that comes back to your memory, that essence of that person because you saw the person. and then
Mhm.
we took the photo. And you can, I'm assuming that's how it is. I don't know that for a fact,
Completely. Yeah,
but
completely. I say we talk about the fact that there's like cellular memory. So
yes,
when
that
you
makes
are
sense.
on the trip and you're experiencing this or you meet people, like, so when we travel and we meet children or we meet somebody and you talk to them and it's there is almost like this connection. Or I always used to say, I fall in love with my models just a little bit
Hmm.
because you are studying them so close and they become a part of you and they get imprinted. And so, I have to really like the model. Or even when we travel and you meet people, do they have a gentleness about them? Do you feel like warm towards them? And then you want to capture them. There's something about, like, I do think as us artists, we for posterity, there's something that we're leaving behind. We're leaving an imprint of us meeting this person, and we want them to be forever, live forever. We want other people to meet them. So that's why sometimes it's difficult to explain to people that it's so important as an artist that, like, for us, you learn technique or something, right? You just in school or for a few years, you're just learning literally how to measure and compare. And then there's a turning point. You walk through a door where you go, okay, now it's not just technical. I have to experience something and then share that. And I'm always trying to tell people that it's so important for you to get your own references, because it won't be as personable, it won't be as moving. I just think that so many people will say, well, I don't travel, or I can't travel, or I don't know how to use the camera. And I'm saying, well, it's not just about shading. It has a lot to do with, like, what do you want to say? And so don't just take what other people have taken photos of. Like, if you can't travel, then document your family, document your neighbors.
Hmm.
That's just as important. And that can be the greatest story for you. So it's very important that you have a connection to your own references.
Yeah, because you're trying to get the story. That's
Mhm.
what you're trying. And that story, I'm assuming, is their story, but also just as important, your story, how you see
Sure.
that moment in time, how you
It's our
visualize.
filter. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's your filter, how you visualize who this person is and what they are. It may not really be who they are or what, but for you,
Right.
it really
Right.
is, right? You can see
Yeah.
it. And
Well, and it's funny because sometimes when Scott in the past, we'd like go to a country, right? And we would have maybe a show from that country. And one time we went to Tibet and we came back and we had a show. And it was kind of funny because all of my paintings and drawings looked a little bit sweet. Everybody just must be so nice there. And it's not that I need to do that. And then all Scott's paintings, had a little bit of edge, had a
yeah.
little bit of attitude, because he loves to, I don't know, I don't want to say exaggerate. He loves people's character. So he's not going to smooth out anything. In fact, if somebody has a snaggle tooth, or if somebody, is kind of
Mhm,
something, he's going to put it.
mhm. I,
I might naturally, I don't know, maybe I naturally will, like, make people be a little bit younger looking. I don't know. So, but it was pretty obvious on the walls. We're like, did we go to the same country?
I know if I'm going to have my portrait done, it's going to be by you. It's not going to be
Well, isn't that funny? I know it's funny.
make me look
I
like an
maybe
old,
people
tired
better.
out man. That's
Okay.
yeah, I'll be 20 years younger in your eyes, maybe,
Yeah.
and more hair. So, and do you guys, I mean, I know it's not something that you seek out or even maybe even want, but do you get, I mean, you must have people asking for portraits as commissions and things like that. Do you guys do those kind of things?
Well, rarely.
I would think
I
because it's
mean,
not your, I mean,
I've done a few commissions through my whole career, and it's always because of, like, somebody I knew.
yeah,
But I haven't really, people don't ask us. Scott has done he used to do them in his 20s, and then Scott has done a few, like, deans of law or things like that at our university here at Wake Forest.
right.
But other than that, people just don't ask us. And I don't know if it's because our work, I don't know, like, I don't know, but no, people don't re actually reach out to us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because you're creating, you're an artist, you're a fine artist, and it comes across that way in your imagery, obviously. But I could see somebody go, I mean, I could say, yeah, I would want somebody like you to do it, that
I'm totally open for it. I mean, the only thing is that it would probably, I would love to be able to have them post for me or to work for my own references because I think sometimes what happens with some of my friends who do portrait commissions, the clients don't realize how important lighting is. They just don't. So they'll ask my friends to like do a piece and it's just totally like flash on or there's no form
right.
and and so yeah, I think I would want to be, have a say or like how the lighting is or the pose, but
Yeah.
no, I mean I'm open for it. I mean I'm you know
Yeah.
sure.
Huh? Well, s- so you guys have visited so many countries, right? I mean, you've
We've
China.
visited a bunch, but we haven't, I mean, there's so many I want to go to, but yeah, we've been to China a few times. We've been to Nepal and we want to go back. And I want to see more of South America. And
You've
where
also
else?
you've also done Native American imagery
Mhm.
as well, quite a bit. And I
Yeah,
and I think it's interesting how you do that because you also celebrate the artists that you paint, right? As far as I remember Scott was telling me about how you give back some of the sales maybe of
definitely Scott does. He feels obligated because he'll make so much money on a painting or something that he donates to like the Indian school funds, or he will just send a check to his models. He's one model he's supported a bunch, like, for prom or for her schooling. And I think he definitely has that sense about him that he feels that he's gotten so much,
yeah.
and he pays them for like sessions, but he feels definitely like that is something that he wants to do.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think it feels like it would be something where he connects so deeply to the person
Yeah,
that it's more than just a model. It's them as a person, as an individual, as a
yeah.
culture, as whatever. Yeah, which I found I'd never heard of an artist doing that. I thought it was very unique and interesting that he did that. Yeah. So what other interesting things do you guys do as either by yourself, what you might do that's interesting that other people maybe don't do? And I'm sure there's lots of things. Well, for one thing, you teach classes online,
I
right?
do.
Yeah, which
Oh,
is
and
great.
that all started because of, the shutdown. And so sometimes when you have limitations and sometimes when circumstances happen, like it's amazing. What's that saying? What's something about the mother of necessity? What's that saying where it's like you blossom because
Invention is the mother of necessity.
yeah,
Yeah.
or something. It's exactly it. So because I mean we had shows and trips, everything so much planned. Everything is like completely taken away from you. All of a sudden you're just like, wow, and I'm like, so you just don't have any fear anymore. So you start a Patreon or you start online classes and it has been the greatest thing. It has been my biggest joy. And because the reason why I did do workshops, before the shutdown and stuff, but not that many, maybe once a year or something. But I truly feel, and Scott and I are different in that. I mean, I feel like art it has always been a struggle for me. And so when I was in school, I was never like one that the teacher would like put the work on the wall. And then the moment I got with Scott, here I am, with Scott and Richard and Nancy and Dan Gerhardt and Rose and all these people who were so excellent. And I then just, wanted to hide. And so for about 16 years, I mean, I would sell things for sure, but I could not have made, like, I wasn't making a full living on my own. I mean, I would make money, but it was little money. And I was a support system for Scott. Um, and And then I would say in my mid to late 30s, I just decided that, I'm gonna try and, see, not, I guess just not hide so much. And so, I had a show, and I started to teach a little bit. And then slowly, I mean, little by little, just building confidence. But I feel that if anything of like my talent, it's not about teaching technical. It's not like saying, oh, you do this and then you shade here and you do
Right.
that. It's to me, I feel like, well, I can still remember how incredibly hard it is. I can still remember, like it's still in my DNA, how difficult it is. And you know that there's certain teachers that they can't remember. They just can't really remember what it was like to not know how to do something or how hard it was to like hear something and try and incorporate it.
Hmm.
Like you can hear 1,000 times to do something, but then there's like you have to like incorporate it and then you have to practice it. And then, there's, practice and practice and practice. So I think that that could be maybe one of a talent that I have and something that I feel like all my life lessons have led up to this. And so now meeting people online.
Hmm.
So favorite thing, like yesterday I did a Zoom. So I do one-on-one mentoring and I do one online classes. But I mean, I get to talk to people in Australia.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I talked to a lady in the Netherlands. I get to talk to people in Mexico, all over the country. And I feel like I have friends. So it's literally like you and me talking,
Hmm.
and we talk about their art. And I feel like, oh my God, I was meant to do this. Like I was meant, like everything was brought to this point because, if people see my work and they go, oh, well, you could never have issues, it's like, well, I can. And I can even show my students, hey, you know what? Like I had to throw this piece out. Or like what I said before, like, maybe 7 out of 10 pieces are just not good enough. They're
Yeah.
just not good enough. And so I get it. Like, and because students think that everything you do, you just sign it and you sell,
Right.
or that you work it, or that maybe it even comes back to you and you have to like think about it and send it someplace else. So there's all these things that I think I can like reassure people. And so, anyways, honestly, I don't, and if online classes hadn't happened and Zoom and all this stuff, I mean, I don't know if I would be as happy,
Isn't that
as I
interesting?
am. So,
Yeah, no, I actually understand that. I feel like probably what I'll be remembered for is more the podcast than anything else I do, more than my writing or,
hmm,
whatever it is. It'll probably be the podcast. And who would have known that's what it is? But you had to go through that whole process, have all those experiences, and you got to do it in double because you got to do it and your husband got to do it. So when he's having problems, you're experiencing it as well. Whatever it is, you're going down the same,
right.
rabbit hole. So you have all these experiences because that's the only way you can do what you're doing is to have had it happen to you and to understand and to be able to try to guide people through that
Mhm.
obstacle course, which it is. And so, how do they get to you? Is it through Patreon, or I know you
Yeah, I
have
think,
a YouTube channel too, right? The Artist Diaries,
yeah.
right?
So I mean, it's people hear about it through our website or Instagram, stuff like that. You promote a class on Instagram and, people are on your newsletter, but, for sure, like, yeah, like people who signed up for Patreon. So what that is like, and everybody has a different one. So some people, like for us, we offer like instructional art videos and we offer live streams
Yeah,
where people can watch us paint. Sometimes we paint with a group or they can ask us questions or we demo. And then I offer different tiers of yeah, like a one-on-one where we
right.
meet for like an hour and and we talk about their work. I share screen and I work on their stuff with Photoshop and I say, well, this would be my suggestion. I would like, do this here,
Wow.
and kind of, that type of thing.
Yeah. That's so amazing because if I were going to be an artist, that's exactly how I would do it. I would go to people like yourself and use that skill set because that's like being an actor and going, yeah, I'm going to get Ben Affleck to help me with some of my lines, in a way it
Yeah.
is. because they're
Hmm.
getting to have somebody that has all is a professional artist making real money with real galleries in real demand and taking the time, because a lot of artists don't want to take the time and energy to do that, because it does take time away from your core thing, which is making art.
Well, it honestly, I find it really helps me. I mean, we don't have children, so I don't have that, time that is taken away. So I feel like I have, it's interesting. I don't know if it's like a weird time warp, but I feel like I have all the time in the world.
I
Like
can,
I've never been that type of person that says there's not enough time. Like I'm like I always have too much time. Like I it's funny. So I love breaking up my day. Like so if I go to my studio and I work for a couple of hours, I love breaking it up and then meeting someone on Zoom for an hour. It's like it then gets me revved up because now I've just been talking about art for an hour.
right,
And now I'm like, okay, great. Now I can go back to work a little bit. And so it actually has helped me so much because also I have to analyze things. I have to think
right.
about, that's the greatest thing in the world to teach someone else because then while it's coming out of your mouth, you're going, I really need that too. Like I actually need to do that on my work. So
I've heard
um
artists say that, other artists say that before. When they're teaching, they actually, or teaching a class, they learn things that help them, especially if artists or students ask them questions. They go, oh, let me think about that. I don't know exactly how I do that. Let me try to explain. So it
yeah,
happens to you too, then.
totally. And it's great. I absolutely love it. Like I said, I mean, I love doing art. But I think I love teaching or I love sharing art with people equally or even more in a way because um and I love my groups. I mean, being an artist, even though Scott and I are both artists, we work in separate studios. So it can be lonely. I mean, like Scott and I both listen to books on tape or we listen to podcasts because we both want to hear the spoken word. Some people tell us that they can only listen to music, but that's funny. Like I can listen to music if I'm in a group and we're drawing a model, but I can't listen to music when I'm all by myself. I feel like, I don't know, like I need to feel like there's a human with me in a way. I love hearing a story. I love hearing something. I love long form novels. Like
Hmm.
my favorite of all time is like listening to a 50-hour book by like Charles Dickens or something
Hmm.
because it's just like you want to go back to the studio. It's like you're craving to listen to that story more. So you kind of go back to the studio to kind of keep working on something because you keep wanting to hear the story. So,
You
for some
find
reason,
yourself when you're doing that, that it's like for me, when I write, I can listen to music, but it can't be things that I really like. It has to be more like jazz or
yeah.
something that I'm not going to actually hook into the music. It has to fill some other space. And I wonder if that's what it is for you for like books on tape as well, or podcast.
Well, I can listen to, I like listening to novels. It's hard for me to probably listen to something that's a very serious or very tons of information like nonfiction.
Yeah,
When you really have to like listen.
right,
But
exactly.
story, I can just be a painting and but I just wanted to kind of yeah agree with you with music, and that's also a reason why I find because I've done this in the past where I thought, okay, I'm just going to listen to music if the music is so good, I stop.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
the problem.
I mean, just kind of like it kind of like grabs you. You're just like, oh, you're like moving.
Right.
And music creates such emotions.
It does.
So I can't handle that.
Yeah,
I have, so that's why I love kind of like novels. It's why yeah, that's why I like novels so much because they're sort of long and
right. I do find sometimes I'll write a song that has some kind of pertinence to
uh-huh.
the book, because I write murder mystery kind of things.
Hmm.
And when I do that, I want to actually hear that song so I can put myself in the setting of that character,
Hmm.
what it would be doing. And usually the song takes on a different sensibility than it ever did before when, let's say, they're getting ready to maybe potentially get hurt very badly, and there's
Right.
I'm doing that right now with Angie from the Rolling Stones, and that's so I kept playing it over and over as a loop almost to just try to be in that place. But it completely took on a different life cycle. It became part of the book, which is why I can't
Wow.
a lot of music other than blues or jazz unless it's specifically something like that. And I have done that, maybe a half a dozen times in my books. And this one particularly, for whatever reason, music was part of the storyline. So I had to listen to it to make it work with the dialogue,
Right.
the moment, and the beat. And somebody who told me something, Russell Case, Russell Case, he's a
Mhm.
landscape painter. So he paints, and I find this so interesting. First of all, I find most of the artists I interview listen to music when they paint, or something like you, podcasts or something. Almost all of
Oh,
them.
fine.
So I would say it's got
Mhm.
to be in the high 90s, maybe more. But Russell says when he paints, and he sees the beats of the music in his
Mm.
way he paints. And if I look at his paintings, I can see where there is in the way he lays it out, kind of a beat of music. And he definitely has that. And I think other artists do. Obviously, you like to have sound music, the sound of the human voice. Do you think those beats of that are also in your paintings?
I've never even heard that before. That's
That's
fascinating.
what I thought. I was absolutely blown away. And I've started looking at other artists' work and asking them this question because I don't know.
Yeah, I think, God, scientists and people have studied the creative process so much and color and sound and all that stuff and how it affects us. So, you know how they say what's those words where they say that people can like, if they see a,
Synesthesia.
yeah. And so there's all these things that are like such a
My
really,
character has synesthesia, by the way. The,
wow.
so it's
Yeah, I mean,
really
it's so
fun to throw in
fascinating.
how, because you can see, colors will have a number, or a shape might be a color, or music
Mhm.
might be a taste, even, whatever.
Right.
Yeah. And
It,
there are a
it's
lot of artists that do have that synesthesia.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried painting with no sound, and I can
Terrifying.
do it,
I would.
but no, I definitely love hearing stories. I definitely, my favorite. Not only do I love things like Charles Dickens or Don Quixote. I'm just trying to think of books that were like so like memorable and they were so long and I loved them. I love I don't know if it's children or if it's adult fantasy, like Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or Philip Pullman, The Golden Compass.
Yeah.
And I love listening to that stuff. And that's the type of stuff I can listen to over and over again
Yeah.
because it just I don't know, like I can hear it for the first time again, or I love the company of like the familiarity of it and
Yeah.
it
It's
feels
soothing.
soothing. Yeah.
See? Right? That's what it is, I think,
Yeah.
is that it puts you in a sense of maybe joy or happiness that
Hmm.
allows the creativity to flow,
Yeah.
like Russell Case flow with the music. It's just you're doing it with the word, that you have
Yeah.
a long commitment to these books anyway. They're so soothing that it puts you
Hmm.
in a different mindset that allows you to paint how you want to. And that, like you said, I can do it if it's quiet, but it's not, I don't like it. Isn't that
Yeah. I mean,
interesting?
I think yeah, I don't know. There's all these different parts of our brains,
Yeah.
and they say that we don't even use most of it. So maybe, yeah, maybe parts of my brain or my nervous system needs company.
Well, I think
So,
artists are different. I think they
mm,
have different sensibilities. They see the world differently. They're much more observant, in my opinion. They're sensitive to touch, light, sound, smells. They're introverted. They're in their own mind. They have their own dialogue going on. I think all those things are real. And so when you have that kind of biological setup anyway, and that's why you can make it as an artist and can do it because it requires a very special skill set, that those things that hit you like that affect you differently than other people.
I think, yeah, I agree with you. I think that you nurture that though. I think it takes practice because to like go and do something every day, even like you said, like artists can have bad years. I mean,
Yeah,
literally.
yeah,
I mean, and you, it's the determination to like every day just keep trying, and you have ups and downs and just not get so defeated.
yeah,
Then I think you train this muscle for resilience. You train this muscle for like, okay, it's more enjoyable than it's not. And also, there's nothing else I would rather be doing. So, no matter if this is a struggle a little bit every day of problem solving, I enjoy this more than if I had to do other things. So, but I mean, one of the things that I find is that there's a lot of people out there that want to be artists. They crave that part of their life that maybe they weren't able to do. And and it's hard when you don't have, I mean, so luckily Scott and I, like you said, we could support each other when we're up or down. And also we just don't have we don't have a backup plan really.
right.
And I see people who, they have families and they have habits. And to break out of those habits of people pleasing, or, you kind of do, like, you kind of do have to make a priority of like your choices, your art, and not just like not willing to give in, because you also, it's hard to have confidence to say what I'm doing today is important enough to say no to other people.
Yeah,
And they might get mad at me for saying no, but then it's like them moving into being an artist. You have to, I don't like using the word selfish, but there is making yourself a priority,
yeah,
because otherwise the world and your friends and family they will they will take over.
yeah,
Because if they don't think that you have a real job,
right.
then you'll be asked for things constantly. Can you do this? Can you do that? Or blah blah. And you're like, I think people just know, and I think it's because we built this muscle enough. Like there's a force field around us
Yeah,
that they know we think of it as seriousness, and it's serious to us.
yes,
So we're not going to break that. And but I see that when I mentor people, it's hard for them. They want it so bad, but it's hard to like change to becoming the mentality of being an artist. And it's like everything, like you said, it's everything you see. It's when you travel. It's like when you travel, you want to go see museums.
yeah,
The way you want to sit in one spot and not
right.
just rush through everything. So it's kind of like you're changing, yeah, how you see the world.
Well, it is. And the fact that you have a spouse that is an artist helps tremendously
It does. It does.
because they understand the artist mentality because they have it and the creative
Right.
process. And I think for some artists, like you're talking about, people that might want to be artists that feel they have it, but if they don't have a spouse that understands that let's
Oh,
say
yeah.
in the studio working and that person says, can you get some dinner for us, and interrupts the flow. And the artist goes, I'm working, and they're like, well, I know, but you can go back and do that in a little bit. We need to do this. They don't
Mhm.
that spouse doesn't understand. No, this is when you're flowing and you need to be doing that. You can't just stop. I mean, you can, but it's hard. You have a rhythm and the rhythm
Yeah.
allows you to do what you do. And I think for some artists that maybe can't get over that hump, it's because they don't have the person behind them to also help and understand when they say, no, this is what I have to do
Yeah.
now. They don't understand it. Why? Why do I have to? I don't get it. I
I
mean, I'm
know.
just
That's
asking for
exactly
five
true.
minutes, right? I just need 5 minutes of your time. Yeah,
Yeah.
that face kind of fit. I've about got to figure it out. And I mean, I don't know if that's right or not, but
I totally agree with you. And it's setting a precedent. It's like when you meet somebody, you kind of teach that person how to treat you. You
right.
tell them who you are, and then they react that way. And I remember so well, like the first time that I went to Richard Schmidt's house. He lived in Evanston, and Scott would house sit for him sometime. And I remember Richard inviting us over. And it was the first time it like opened my eyes completely. I mean, I was just young. I was probably like 19. But you walk into his house, and it was an old Victorian house. But so his living room and his dining room were pretty much his studio. And
Mhm.
like just like his paintings, every table, every couch, every surface, every wall had been in a painting.
Hmm.
So his aesthetic was his life. So he could have sat a model down in a chair and that would have been a painting. You had to walk through his studio to even get to the kitchen. He
Hmm.
didn't hide it away in the garage or in the basement or somewhere else. And that's something that I tell people all the time. Don't hide it. You know, if this is who you are, you shouldn't be embarrassed, or you shouldn't like say that that's separate, or like have the immaculate living room that you
Right.
want people to sit in. Like, no, people should come and sit on a couch next to your easel and
Right.
that be your living room.
Well, I think it also allows them to say, I'm an artist when you do that,
Exactly. Like
right?
any unapologetic. Yeah.
Exactly. That this is who I am, and I take, ownership of this. I know when I first started writing books, I thought I could do it. I wasn't sure. And I told somebody very important that I was going to write a novel. And I did that specifically to force myself to own
Mhm.
up to that. Because anytime I would see this important person, they're probably going to ask. And if I
Right.
didn't finish it, I would be like,
Right.
well, I just didn't get it. No.
Right.
Once I said I'm going to write a novel, then it committed me. And I think what you're saying with the putting the easel there or the things there that people go, okay, they're an artist. Show me what you got. Right. And then you have to show them what you got. Right. You don't
Yeah.
have to, but they're going to want to know. And that's going to force you to commit to
Mhm.
getting better and to, making art that you're pleased with. Because even as an artist like who's a professional, you still say, I throw out, whatever, 6 out of
Mhm.
10 or whatever, right? So you're
Mhm.
always still striving to get to the next level and a better painting and, that meets your criteria of quality or what you value as quality. So yeah, I think, those are the things that you teach people that are so valuable that, other, people who are trying to become you in the sense of an artist, right? As a professional
Yeah.
artist, they don't know what that means or how it takes or what it's required. It's a very long, hard journey. I mean, I'm not a painter, but I've interviewed enough artists and sculptors and photographers and writers to understand the journey seems to be kind of the same thing for everybody to some extent.
Yeah, it's like forward and backwards and
Yeah.
forward and backwards. And I think when we're young, we think everything is going to be up like that. And yet you're going to be knocked down. I mean, there have been some horrific like things, we've had like horrible shows. Scott and I both have had literal shows where we sold nothing.
Yeah.
And we've had shows where we sold everything. And you've had such ups and downs to where I've just become so even about it. So, you know, I just, it's like, I just know that, okay, just don't take anything too personally
Yeah, that's the
because,
thing.
um, you know,
That is the
you
thing. And
chose.
I've I've seen this and I've seen it from my artists. They go to do some of these museum shows and they put out insanely beautiful material, like a great show, and don't sell anything.
Hmm.
And I can see how
Hmm.
even professionals, they understand it, they know it happens, but it's still devastating at some level. That, because their peers are all around them too, right? And
Yeah.
but they still, it may be devastating, but they still understand it and they still, I understand. I'm gonna I'm gonna do the same thing next year and it'll be the same kind of
Yeah,
quality.
it equals out, it balances.
Yeah.
And I don't think artwork, like we've all, or even in from like masters from 100 years ago, like us artists will like research or look in a book and this painting that we just drool over. Oh, this painting the client rejected. Or, this painting that we love so much, like
Yeah.
got exited out of a show or whatever. And we go, how could that happen?
Yeah.
And so, this masterpiece doesn't change just because somebody didn't buy it at this one show or
That's
didn't win
right.
an award.
So true. I see it all the time.
Yeah.
Even in Maynard Dixon, there was a great painting that didn't sell in like 93. They couldn't sell it. It was a 20 by 25 by 30. And now it's like $1 million painting everybody would want. But at that time,
Yeah.
I don't know. It wasn't just what. And I see this in art shows, even ones I do. Often the painting that I think is the best, and often the artist will agree with me, is they like it the best, is not may not be the most sellable because
Yeah.
whatever subject matter or whatever, but the way that they did it and executed it is just
Mhm.
amazing. And I can see that. And other people, it might not sell. And I'm like, you're missing the boat. We all know you're missing the boat, but they can't see it. And then later
Yeah,
on, like you said, now it ends up in books, and then well, now it's iconic, right? Or it's, everybody wants
yeah,
that piece. I mean, Ed Mel's paintings with, when he went really contemporary, I had to explain why this was to the Western art community, and it was a battle, and then all of a sudden it wasn't. Then it was just flipped, and now, well, I want those. So
wow,
things,
yeah.
the one thing that doesn't change is quality's quality's quality, you
Yeah,
know.
no, I agree. I don't know if it can be quantified, but there is something about, does it move you?
Yeah,
Did you double take?
yeah,
I always tell people like, well, we all have to be a little bit, I mean, not critical, but we do have to question our own work sometimes and say, well, if your painting was on a wall with 50 other paintings and just someone walks into the room, will they just glance over yours or will
yeah,
they like double take? Will they want to go closer to it? So, I mean, a lot of that is like, you know, pattern and color and composition and in the strength of light and dark and stuff, and it's not the tiny little shapes that
mhm,
what I try and get my people to stop doing is that
right,
it's not those tiny little shapes that is gonna make somebody like move forward. It's the larger
that's right.
story.
Often those little ones are the shapes of the problem of the painting. That they tried to put
Yeah,
everything in the kitchen sink. That's the ones that I
yeah,
call them, where they tried to put the rainbow and the ducks and the
yeah,
little deer and all this. And there's like, oh, well, more is better. I mean, they don't
right,
show in my gallery, but I see them all the time that people will bring me things that, they want to show in my gallery, and they'll have all these objects everywhere. And it's like, but I put in the little clouds and the moonrise and a rainbow on the sign. So yeah, I know that's the problem.
yeah.
I don't, I'm not that blunt, but it's, yeah,
Well, a lot of times too, I tell people, look at your work on your phone. Because like if you think about any sort of judge in a competition or like for me, like when I'm mentoring and they send me work, pretty much the first time I'm going to see it is when I kind of look on my phone and, you see it this big. So
yeah,
if it this big, if it captures you, then you know that like, oh, okay, I want to see more. And
yeah,
so it's really important for people to look at their own work very like kind of like 2 inches, and if it's confusing, if the lights and darks and the colors, if things aren't like really proportionate and balanced and really dramatic, I mean, they don't have to be dramatic, but if they don't like make you want to look more and like zoom in,
right.
because I mean, I've judged shows. I mean, you've probably judged shows, and sometimes you can get like 1,000, 3,000 entries, and you know how your eyes go blind, right? To shapes and colors, and everything starts to look the same, and you're just like, and you want that judge to like zoom in.
Yeah.
So much of it is like, what does it look like small?
Yeah, that's a great, yeah, that is a great tip to use. And as even, I'm sure I innately do that when I'm looking at stuff too, and
Mhm.
haven't really thought of it in those terms. But you're right. If it doesn't look good small, if you can't, I mean, you're not gonna, you forget it, something's wrong, and
Yeah.
it's the same, like, again, Ed Mel used to look at his paintings in a mirror, and I know a lot of artists that do that as well.
Yeah.
What's the problems when you look at it in that way?
It's kind of like look like Alice in Wonderland. We're looking at something, we're tricking our brains. We're seeing, I like to look at my work upside down a lot too. And I like to look at my work like actually I take a photo of it and I look at it on a monitor. And for some reason, it's so much different looking at flat on a monitor than it is like if it's in person. So
Right.
there's something going on in my eyes and my brain and we have to trick ourselves because I think I get value blind. I think that if I've looked at my work too long, then I just can't, I can only see what's there and I can't see the possibilities. So
Mm.
that's why I think it's easier sometimes, to have another person look. Or like for me, like if I'm looking at someone's work, like I'm so much better at helping somebody else than I am looking at my own stuff because I know I've been like brainwashed. I'm like,
Yeah, you
I can look.
can't. Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
weird. fascinating.
But that's a real thing. When you,
Hmm.
it's like I'll be editing my book and I've gone through it 20 times and I'll
Yeah.
miss words that are, but each time I skip over it and I see the same misspelled or wrong word or whatever, and I do it again and again and again. And sometimes other editors will be missing, and then one will be like, "Oh, you misspelled this," and you're like, how did that get through?"
I
Well,
know.
because we're all just,
Crazy.
especially for
Right.
the person who made it, you can't see it because your mind won't let for whatever reason. It looks right in your mind. But when somebody asked me one time to look at this painting at the show, it was a Oscar Burninghouse. It was a Native American on a horse. And they go, "I'm thinking about buying it. What do you think?" And I go, "Well, I like it, but he doesn't have a foot in the stirrup. There's no foot. He didn't paint it." And he goes, "Oh, I didn't see that." He goes, "I never saw that." I go, "Yeah, a lot of people probably don't see it, but it stuck out to me rather quickly. It was the kind of in the middle of the painting, but for whatever reason, because it's on a horse and the legs kind of down there, he just assumed that the
Right.
foot is there too, and he just didn't do it for whatever reason. Great artist. Well,
Exactly. Forgot to give him toes. Yeah.
yeah, he just didn't do it. I mean, lots of artists forget to put it depends on the artist. They don't sign it, right?
Yeah, I had that happen once. And the funny thing is that the gallery had sold it and sent it back to me saying I hadn't signed it. And I was like, oh my gosh. And when I got it, I had signed it, but it was kind of, maybe not as obvious.
Right.
And so I determined ever since that time, which was like a long time ago, on the back of the painting, I say signed lower left or signed lower right, because I never want that to happen again. Because yeah, some artists like hide their signatures, or it could be hidden a little bit. And so I just
Some
remember
artists just
that.
don't sign, they forget to.
Yeah, it's
Depends on the
yeah,
artist. I have
it's probably
one artist that's very typical, and I know that's who this individual is. And so when I get their work in, I first go and look and see if they titled it and if signed it. And 20% of the time there's going to be one that isn't, and I'll be like, okay,
oh
it's
no.
just who they are, and I know their little idiosyncratic things,
Yeah,
and Dixon didn't, there's not a lot, but it's probably 40 paintings out there, 50 paintings Dixon didn't sign. And some of
wow.
those would have been gifts. Some of those might have been studies that
Right.
weren't, he didn't meant to,
Yeah.
sell, just didn't sign them.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I don't sign things unless I'm gonna send them off.
yeah, there you go.
So if they're just studio, like they probably won't be signed until yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you're gone and all your works get dispersed
Oh
to
my
whoever, whatever that is,
right.
yeah, they
I
can have.
know. Yeah.
So what haven't we talked about that you would like to talk about? Is there anything?
Oh my no, just that I cannot wait. I'm very excited. And I've been doing a lot of different drawings. And then I figure when your deadline happens, I'll just choose my four best.
Yeah.
That's what I tend to do because, I'll just do a whole bunch and then just choose I know Scott just did. I'm teasing you right now, but I'm giving a teaser is that Scott did a gorgeous one. And I'm not even going to show it to you because I
Uh-huh.
want you just to wait. He did a gorgeous one. And it's different from him. So I was like, oh, this is neat.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But so I love the fact that you are getting Scott to do drawings too, because like you said, I don't think artists think of them that way, or they tend to do oil paint more. But
Right.
I just so happy.
And I thought it could be fun for them too,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah.
I wanted to celebrate that part of what you do that so often just kind of gets overlooked. And it's such a critically important part
I
of
hope I
what
get to see different styles. I hope I
you
get to
will.
see all different kinds of takes. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, you're going to see that. You're going to see some that are definitely like that. And I've managed to get a few Ed Mel drawings that he did too. So we'll have those as well. And I'm trying to think if I ever sold an Ed Mel drawing. And I don't think so, because Ed would just keep them and use them. And, he did beautiful work. I remember
Mm.
one time he was showing, we were talking, we were in my car and I had a napkin and we're working on a big painting that he's going to do, and he's drawing it out, and he's like this. I think it'll be like this and this and this, and finishing beautiful. And I handed it back to him and said, sign it. He's like, what? I go, just put your name. And he
Yeah.
did. And he's like, why? And I go, it's a piece of work. It's an art, which
Hmm.
was in a vehicle which I sold. Then I never got it out of the vehicle, I think, when I sold it. So,
Oh
but,
no.
it was, I at least recognized at that moment what he had done in that
Yeah.
napkin had merit and value. And not just value in the sense of money, but value in the sense of
Hmm.
history. That
Right.
that's what these artists do. Dixon did too. He do these little 2 by 3 things that turned into 30 by 40s that were very similar to his initial thought pattern of what he wanted it to do. And so I'm excited to see. That's why I gave no parameters. It's like, do what you want, subject matter or size or whatever, because every artist is going to take that to a different level. And
I know. That's what's because you've done something that nobody's done before. So I mean, this is going to be like
yep,
groundbreaking, I think. So that's why I can't wait to see what all these artists do. Like, I know Matt Smith will be completely different than like, you know, Russell. And
yeah,
like, I'm just looking
Tom
at the names
Fleming,
here,
yeah, yeah,
David Casson. Oh my
yeah,
gosh, he'll be so different than, everybody else. So
yeah.
it will be a show that people need to see in person, I think.
Yeah, and I hope, like you said, that this will also make drawings more
Oh, I
appreciated,
know it will.
you know? Like Blackshear, I've always loved his drawings. I think Thomas Blackshear, I
Mhm.
have a bunch on my thing that I don't sell that I love, they're just remarkable. And
Yeah,
so to see all those and how they did it, and to be also thrown up against Maynard Dixon, so,
yeah.
which will
Well,
be,
exactly. No, it's exciting because I think people have a preconceived notion of what a drawing is, and
yes,
this is going to change everything.
yes.
So,
And even Shanto Bigay, who's one of my favorite artists, he's going to do some of his etch-a-sketch. He does it.
oh,
He's insane with an etch-a-sketch.
okay, cool.
And he did it because when he was in boarding school, they would give them etch-a-sketches and
Hmm.
they didn't really have access to things and he would just draw with it, right? So, he can do an amazing drawing and he always does 6 minutes. That's what he does. He still does this from when he was a little kid to an adult. He still
Mhm.
draws on an etch-a-sketch and he'll do an insane thing in 6 minutes. It's just like watching opera, you know. Yeah.
That's great.
So yeah, no, I think it's a unique idea. And
Mhm.
it was Ezra Tucker and Blackshear and myself, and I think my son too, we were at a show. I think it was in Oklahoma. And we were talking and Ezra had said something like, you know, we should do drawings are just not appreciated. Because I was talking about Thomas Blackshear. He was standing there, how much I love his drawings. And, I said they should be more money, really, because they're too inexpensive. And Ezra had said something like, yeah, they're just nobody does a show for drawing. And at that very moment, I go, oh, I'm going to do it. I am going to do a drawing and show. You're right. There should be. And I'm going to make it happen. And so that was like 2 years ago or whatever, a year and a half
Well,
ago.
and I can't wait to come and film the whole thing for my artist diaries and show
Yeah.
people the show and your gallery and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I think it's gonna be very interesting.
yeah.
I'll tell you the interesting part for me as my creative component is I get to try to figure out how to hang it.
I know, just because you're going to be surprised what comes, like
Oh,
how big, how small, that,
yeah.
you're just like,
Subject matter, frame
and
size, everything. Right? Oh yeah. No, it's going to be a mind blow. It's going to be very interesting. Luckily I've got to my access probably close to 7,000 feet of showroom if I need it.
oh
So
my God, I can't wait to see this. This
yeah,
is so great.
so we're just it's gonna be
Yeah,
interesting.
I
So
love it.
and so if
Well,
people want to find you, can you just give us like your Instagram and I know your website is your name and it's
yes.
Lyon, right?
Right. SusanLyon.com. Scott and I both share a website, so you'll see both of our work there. And my Instagram is Lyon Fine Art, so Lyon. And Patreon is just patreon.com, Susan Lyon. And YouTube is Susan Lyon Fine Art. And in all these places you have links, right? So
Right.
anytime you go to something, we'll always have a link so you can see. and go to other things too. So
I'm so excited to see both you and Scott at the show and the after the show on the 15th, and we have a big banquet with all the artists too. So everybody
can
can.
you believe you're doing that? I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
that's great.
Oh yeah. That's fun. That's fun for me because
Okay, good.
it's getting to celebrate the artists, which is what it's all about, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's going to be super fun. I'm excited.
Okay, good. We are too.
Yeah.
Yay.
All right.
Perfect.
Well, thank
I'll
you
see
so
you in
much.
February.
Yes, I'll look forward to getting those photos of the images of the so I can
Okay.
check them out. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye. So this is one of the drawings that I'm gonna have in the show. Gosh, what size is it? It's somewhere around a 24 by 36. I don't even know exactly if it's a 24 by 36, or it could be a 26 by 34. It's something like that. And I started off with willow charcoal. I like to start off with charcoal. I like to start off with like a very kind of light value, easy to erase vine charcoal. And then as I was doing that, you can go to a slightly harder charcoal. There's different degrees of charcoal. And I was just like, oh, I'm not able to get the darks. And so inevitably, I wind up using a pastel pencil. So, just a Conte Paris pastel pencil black. And then, just to be able to kind of get in there, get in the eyes, kind of get in the fingers. For me, pastel has always been just a little bit more permanent. You can use compressed charcoal, like you can use compressed charcoal pencils, which I do like, but I don't know, there's just something about pastel because it's velvety and soft and yet can go really dark. I don't know. I'm definitely much more someone who really loves to use pastel over charcoal, but I will combine them. I'll go back and forth and I'll, use them both together. When I'm going back in and I'm just doing real subtleties and then I can sharpen this really to a fine point, that's when I go back in. And the one thing I do absolutely love is to use willow charcoal on top of pastel. And it has a little bit of a texture. So, I mean, when I'm dragging the charcoal or pastel over it, it has a little bit of a dry brush look. And even no matter how much I mush in and I rub in and I try to fill in the pores, sometimes the pastel will still almost show that little bit of air. And with charcoal on top of it, if I just use a very, very soft, gentle touch and I go back and forth, it's just like mixing the pastel together and I don't have to use an external like finger or brush. I do love painting and drawing children. I do love painting and drawing children from our trips. I just love it. And I love it when you have like an older sister or a mother and child. It's something that I'm really drawn to. And so whenever Scott and I travel, it's just usually when Scott and I are looking through all of our photos, we kind of know which ones that I'm going to do and which ones Scott's going to do. And I tend to do the ones where there is two people together, and especially where there is like an older and younger, figure. I just have always been into that. I like having the difference between ages. Sometimes I really love doing grandparents and children. This is an older sister of the little baby. So at the very end of a drawing, all those little tiny nuances or those little transitions. So you have, the proportions and you have the drawing and the values pretty much correct. It's always those last touches are from one feature going onto another. So, or the shadow pattern transitioning into the light. That's when I'll use one of these paper stumps or I'll go in with like a little brush and I just kind of walk the form and I go, where's a hard edge and where's a soft edge? Where's a hard edge and where's a soft edge? And it's kind of like editing a novel. I mean, you go through it once and twice, and then you go through it again and again. And there's like levels. There's like an onion. Levels of how much you can nuance it. And something like this, I definitely like the kind of strong, outline in certain areas. I like the abstraction. I like some of the bold strokes of the white chalk on their clothes. But then, the transitions of the face, I definitely wanted them to be, softer. I could have kept them harsher, but if I did, it might age a child. So I think the last steps that I'm going to be doing is figuring out where to put a hard edge in her hair, how to have her hair look like it's coming forward and not just blending into the background so much. A lot of times, the great thing with drawing media is that I could put in a harder edge. I could put in a harder edge up here, but then I can soften it a little bit, you step back. The great thing is that it's not permanent. With drawing media, there's a lot of forgiveness, which is what I absolutely love. And then I'll put these in and then I'll look at my piece from across the room, because that's where you want people to see your work. You want people to see, you want it to be striking from across the room. I want the young baby to be just a little bit lighter. I want her hair just to be a little bit lighter because her hair is thinner. When we think of youth, we think of innocence and we think of lightness and fragile, young babies. And so as people get older, as children get older, I think we can go a little bit darker in the darks, in the hair, in the eyes. But when you have a baby, you don't want to have such darks. I think going super duper dark in a baby kind of almost can be startling. I mean, it could be a little bit off-putting or making that baby look a little bit like haunted or, evil a little bit. So those are just things that are going through my head as I'm doing this. I'm thinking, okay, one of my favorite tools is a Viva paper towel. I just don't think I could be an artist without one. I know that sounds extreme, but I'm very, very serious. It is such a great tool. I use it all the time in my oil paintings and my drawings. The tricky part is to know how many curls to give the baby. Too many curls can look overdone. It almost can look like a wig. You want just the right amount of curl. And it's like, oh my God, I wish there was a textbook, but we just don't know,